All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to On the Park Bench, a public square conversation brought to you by the Congress for the New Urbanism. On the Park Bench presents interactive conversations with thought leaders in new urbanism and allied industries, providing an opportunity for the audience to engage in real time. The webinar series is a platform for CNU members to engage, debate, and collaborate on pressing issues of the day. Today's webinar is Reclaiming Our Vanishing Third Places with Rick Adamski and Jaime Izurieta. And you can share your thoughts on hashtag #OnTheParkBench at tinyurl.com/OTPBfeedback. And don't forget to join or renew your CNU membership, get connected to a powerful movement to advance walkable urbanism, and get the resources and tools to affect change, as well as sharpen your skills in the architecture of community. Navigate to cnu.org and select our member portal. And now for today's webinar. We are joined by Rick Adamski. Rick Adamski is the president of ASH+LIME, a Dallas-based downtown and neighborhood planning firm that has worked in over 30 towns and cities of various types and sizes. Rick employs an incremental, community-focused approach aimed at enhancing the human experience and helping communities achieve tangible progress toward their goals. His work places special emphasis on creating thriving third places that foster community interaction and strengthen local bonds. Rick is a longtime supporter of the new urbanist and strong town movements. Jaime Izurieta is an architect, designer, and author focused on the interaction between users and the built environment. Jaime is the founder of Storefront Mastery, an award-winning creative agency that works with place management organizations to design and activate the interaction between local business and the community. With over 20 years' experience as a designer, small business owner, and economic development consultant, Jaime proudly serves communities all over the nation from Montclair, New Jersey. And I am Lauren Mayer, Communications Manager at CNU. As a reminder, please use the Q&A function to ask questions as they occur to you. Now I'll turn it over to Rick and Jaime to start today's webinar.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I will be sharing my presentation, if I can find it. Hold on. Okay.
Hopefully you can pull it up. I don't want to have to make all this up as I go along.
Yeah, no, you won't. I'll find it.
We could probably do it.
No, I'll find it. Should be here. Found it. Excellent.
So you got it? Cool.
Excellent. Okay. Can you see the presentation now? Can you see it now?
I can see it. Hopefully everybody else can as well. Yes, everyone can see it.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. Our presentation today is called The Third Place, what it is, why we need it, and how to build more. I am super happy to be here joined by Rick, who has been a longtime friend and a colleague, and we really hope you enjoy this. We were already duly presented, which we are super grateful for. So let's begin with the challenge, and I will turn it over to Rick.
Sure. So if we look at the challenge, it's actually a pretty simple one, and we'll talk a little bit about what third places are. But I assume everybody here has some idea because that's why you were interested in hearing more about it. But the challenge is that these are really important places of great economic, social, and cultural importance. They really help to glue the neighborhood together. They're very important for human beings, but they've long been vanishing and weakening. This has been going on for decades. This has accelerated, especially since the pandemic started. And in order to help to bring them back and to strengthen them, we're going to need new strategies. So we wanted to kind of go over the issues and then have a little bit of discussion about what some of those strategies might be and what some of the approaches might take to do that. So just kind of what we know is the third place. It's called that because it's not home, it's not work. These are places where people can spend time, congregate, and connect with other people, to put it very simply. And we'll talk about some of the traits. So Ray Oldenburg in 1989 invented this concept of the third place. It's been of growing interest in our post-COVID world. Oldenburg had certain traits that he had with that described third places. And a lot of times people say, well, this was written in 1989. Do you think the traits are very different now? And I think conditions are very different now, but as I look at it, I don't think the basic traits of third places are necessarily very different than they were at the time. So we'll talk a little bit about what those are. So a third place, some of the things that were defined back in this book in 1989, it's a neutral ground. So to the extent that it's an ideal third place, it's something that can be shared by everybody in the community. It's a leveler. So you may have, certain prestige or status. Ideally, that's leveled off a little bit in these third places. Conversation as the main activity, which is a big challenge now because we know we're all on our phones and our computers, but a place where people can actually converse, and then accessibility and accommodation. So that can mean a lot of different things, but the more it's accessible to more people, the better of a third place that it is. Having regulars, kind of keeping a low profile, kind of having what we might call a playful mood, and maybe most importantly in some ways, that it's a home away from home. It's a place where you can go and you can feel comfortable. The old where everybody knows your name is kind of the ideal of the third place. So why they matter? They're very important for community building. They're very important for mental and we might say social health. They help to support the economy, particularly local economies, particularly a downtown on the commercial district scale. And they're important places where people can engage directly in their community. In a lot of ways, the third place is part of what makes you connected to your immediate community and what makes the place relevant to you. And then I'll talk a little bit about this as well. So there's different classifications that we have. A lot of the times what comes to my mind when I think of third places are commercial places, maybe cafes, maybe barbershops, maybe pubs, diners. But they can also, libraries are brought up a lot as third places, parks and plazas. They can be clubs, cultural centers. You can have places, for example, affiliated with houses of worship. There's lots of different sort of places that can be third places. And I think there's going to be new places that are going to be needed as we go forward in the future.
And the interesting part about this is that I will add to the slide that we just saw, the digital spaces. When they ask us about the relevance of Oldenburg's definition of the third place, I think it's super important to acknowledge that from 1989 to 2024, it's almost been 40 years, I want to say, probably, yeah. And so the technology has advanced greatly. And what we have right now is a completely different landscape of the economy, the society, our behavior, and also of public policy. So these are the 4 factors that we have identified as contributing to the downward trend in the number of third places that we have currently. And so we will discuss each one of them. So the first one is the economic trends. I have included this graphic just to show a little bit of the shift in the quintiles of wealth that we have, especially in the US, where the amount of people belonging to each one of the classes has changed. And as you can see there, the people who have more wealth, accumulating more wealth, has increased. So there's different demands. And so we move on to the economic trends. Projects need to pencil out in order for them to happen. So if I have a project and I have a great idea and it really doesn't make economic sense, I may start strong, but I will have to make too many painful changes, and there is a big chance that it will not see many years open. So what are these economic trends? Number one is specialization. We have specialized greatly. We have found incredible niches. We are able to work in areas that are very, very small and isolated silos that not necessarily are conducive to community building. The world is more organizational now, so there's less just meeting with friends somewhere, but there is this organizational behavior that most of us are following. And so our meetings, our agenda has to be delivered. Let's have a coffee next Thursday at 4. So I don't just go to the coffee place at Thursday at 4 and I know that everyone's going to be there. We have created a lot of wealth, and with that wealth comes different demands. People are willing to invest that wealth to create more, willing to invest that wealth to be in better standing, to find better things, to buy better things. And so the third places might be that they just have moved and shifted a little bit, and they have not disappeared. Another trend is centralization. As we look at the landscape of our cities, we see larger buildings that house less uses. We see larger stores. We see larger offices, larger corporations, and the small space, the small neighborhood cafe, the small neighborhood ice cream parlor, there's not much room for them right now. And as we move on to the societal changes, societal shifts, this is dramatic. This is the change in social media use over time. In 2011, there was 50% of the population using social media. 2021, 74%. As you can imagine, this, after the years that we have just passed, must have increased dramatically. So we move on to the societal shifts. Do people even want third places anymore? There has been a big shift in the trust of our society. We have been moving, thankfully not much, but we have been moving from a very high trust society to a low trust society. What happens here is that a high trust society, people feel like the values are common, and people feel like they can be more open to whatever relations that they can make in the public space. If there is less trust, people are closed off, and people are not willing to make so many relations on the public space. Technology has also changed incredibly from 1989, yes, but also for the last few years. So technology is enabling people to come closer by interests, and the anonymity that exists in social media allows people to, and this is good and bad, allows people to come together without any other factor than we think alike. And there is a great author that some folks might be interested to look further. His name is Balaji Srinivasan. He is based in the Bay Area in California, and he just wrote a book called The Network State, in which he's talking precisely about this, about how communities right now are being built online. And the big shift is going to be those communities being grounded when they decide that they can get together because they have agreed on enough common principles that they can actually get physically together. They can get geographical proximity, and then they will be grounded. They will find a land, they will find a place, they will find a building where they can move their activities to. So that's also interesting about how technology is allowing people to connect in very different contexts and in greater separation. I can be connected to Rick, who is in Dallas, and we have mounted this great presentation, and we met for 2 days in Cincinnati a month ago. So technology is fantastic for that. And also, of course, consumer behavior also changes. We are more technological, we are wealthier, and we are demanding more things. We are right now, I see, for example, a trend on people who are offering team building services for companies. These team building services, they move them into a virtual reality room. So they are chasing zombies in a virtual reality room. The cost of implementing these things is huge, but they can afford that cost because there's enough communities that are willing to bring their employees to these team building activities. So consumer behavior also has changed. And this is very interesting. This is the trend of economics as we have moved from the original extractive economy, in which, for example, I go and I get some carrots, and then I move on to the customization of that is I make the carrot juice for you. And then I move to the next one, in which I buy the carrots from everyone, I make a lot of juice, and I distribute the juice. And then I move on to the experiences in which I stage something. So I turn the carrot juice factory into a museum, and I bring people to see that and to engage with the brand, and also to buy a lot of juice. And then the last one is the transformation. What we're trying to do is we're trying to guide people into some sort of transformation, make their time while they are engaged with our, in this case, third place, to be meaningful and to be somewhat transformational. So the typical third place, where you would have a very low barrier of entry cafe, for example, where someone could go and just order an espresso and be there for 4 hours and meet with people and talk with people, that has changed dramatically. Right now, what we're trying to do is we're trying to mount these laser tag VR team building spaces that are guiding people into some sort of transformation. So we move to the behavioral trends. The experience economy has changed what I just explained. The experience economy has changed how what we are expecting from the places, the brands, the companies that we interact with. Home entertainment has changed the way that we interact with the outside world. We stay at home, we watch Netflix, and while doing that, we are not going to the movies. So we are not using the movie theater as this third place, or the coffee shop outside the movies as the third place. And then the connection. I think the fact that we have the electronic devices that allow us to connect through greater geographical areas, I think that's changing the way that we create communities. And of course, this will come as a beautiful map for very few of you and a horrible map for most. Policy changes have squeezed out the third places from our neighborhoods. It's very, very hard to open a very small ice cream parlor, to open a very small neighborhood coffee shop. That was the typical third place, where people could walk to, where people could just integrate and go and wait for someone else to show up. With changes in zoning, with changes in business regulations, with changes in land uses, it's very hard. It's very unaffordable for people to open these places. It's very burdensome for people to go through long processes to actually open something that will not be profitable, will not pencil out. So the policy changes also have squeezed out the third places. And I turn it over to Rick again.
So I've wanted to come up with some case studies of third places. I was thinking of doing them in a variety of different regions and things like that, but I decided instead to pick some that I had some level of intimate knowledge of, because what I want to understand is, okay, we still do have some of these places, some of them work, and what I want to understand is why, because our old models are not going to work. So this is an example of a place in my neighborhood. It's called Wild Detectives Bookstore and Coffee House, but it actually is not a detective bookstore or anything like that. It's just a place that is very vibrant. If you go at noon, it's very vibrant. If you go at 3, it's hopping. If you go at 11 o'clock p.m., right? It has a lot of energy. It has a lot of people hanging out, and it's a place where you can go and converse with people and meet with them. So I said, okay, why does this place work? Why is it successful, whereas other coffee houses, for example, are having to close at 3 p.m., or other bookstores are not really very vibrant? In the case of this place, it has multiple sources of monetization. It makes money off books, coffee, bars. It actually makes, I think I heard one time, about 30% of its revenue by books, which shocked me. So it has a lot of different ways that it makes money. It has a lot of different ways to bring people in at different times. It has indoor space, outdoor space, and it has strong programming. So what this is proof of is that the old coffee house model, if you're just slinging coffee, it doesn't matter how much you're charging for a latte. You have to combine it with something else in order to make it work as a real third place that can serve people at different times. Okay, so this is a place called Central Arts. Josh, who runs Central Arts, is here. There's 2 different locations. These are in very kind of post-war suburban strip shopping centers near in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You would drive by these places and not know that they're amazing, and they are these incredible places. Venues, galleries, arcades, classrooms. It's a not-for-profit organization that works with developers that have vacant, underutilized space. I think what I would add is that in this case, it's a labor of love. You have Josh, who's dedicated a lot into creating this amazing thing for the community. So, you know, I think there's some people who are willing to do things like this as labors of love, but they need to be supported. You need to figure out ways to get space for them, to get help for them. He's helped development really succeed in some of these strip shopping centers. He can show a lot of data to show that. So it's in the interest either of a developer or of a city to help him out, as has happened in his case, to do something like this. This is a place called Opening Bell. This is just south of downtown Dallas. This is, you know, a great third place. It's open kind of late, not as late as it used to be. But people are hanging out here all the time. You can have concerts. It's the type of place where you could go, grab a cup of coffee, and check out a really cool concert or check out a really cool open mic. That's not as common as it used to be, where there's not that much of a barrier to entry. In this particular case, it's part of this complex called Southside on Lamar. So it's this big residential building that has a lot of things. This basically serves as an amenity for the building. So basically, the developer knew that in order for their whole development to succeed, they had to have things for people to do, and this is a case of that happening. This is a place called Patchouli Joe's. This is in Denton, Texas, which is kind of borderline DFW area, but it's a college town, so it has many really, really cool third places. In this particular case, it's a bookstore, but they also have games that you can get coffee. It's a really welcoming environment, and they have kind of some miscellaneous goods. So this is a bookstore, but you can tell, as with many other places that I've seen, that they're very conscious about creating this as a third place. And I'm sure that it also helps them a lot more to sell books, because I know when I'm in downtown Denton, even though there's a lot of great places to go, I always make it here because it's a great environment, and I always make a point to buy something. And I think a lot of other people are like that as well. And then this is a place called Firehouse Castro Park. Actually, this has an indoor and outdoor space, and we helped to sort of test out the outdoor space several years ago when it was originally kind of in the pre-built stage. This is a place, it's a bar, it's a restaurant, it's a coffee house, but they also have outdoor spaces. It's really well programmed. They've got outdoor games and furniture. They have a lot of different things to do. It's the type of place where you can be the adults, but you can also bring a kid, a toddler, a teenager, and everybody's going to have a great time. So it's well programmed. It has different energies at different times of the day and week. So it's another example of how you can do these things. So all of these places, you know, there was a time, maybe, you know, when I was younger, instead of being a middle-aged guy, there was a time when these places could just happen naturally, when somebody might have a labor of love. Maybe it doesn't make a ton of money, but they could open up a coffee house, and if they wanted to keep it open until 1 or 2 a.m. and you know, just kind of mainly sell coffee, they could do that. What we see, and what I see as many examples in my area alone, is that there's a lot of places that are doing it, but they need to figure out the model to make it work. They need to figure out the creativity, and they need to understand that it doesn't work automatically anymore. You have to take creative approaches. And that's the type of thing that I want to think about, and that we talk to cities about, and that we talk to businesses about, is how can we come up with a strategy to make this a third place and support it? And how can cities, downtowns, you know, economic development organizations, Main Street managers support this type of place?
As you are talking, Rick, one additional third place comes to mind that I have only been a few times to, but I think it works very, very well. It's the Design District in Miami. And this place has the most expensive brands, fashion brands you can think of, and they make a point to make the most extravagant displays. And the place has been designed to be a beautiful gallery for these brands. And they have meeting spaces, they have public spaces where they have concerts. The concerts are mainly free. You can just go there and watch the concert. And I have seen amazing artists there. So Paquito de Rivera once. It's really, really amazing. And people can just be in those public places. People can meet in these public spaces. And yes, if you go to the restaurants and you go to the coffee shops and if you go to the entertainment places, it will be a higher offer and of course a more expensive offer. That is a very high barrier of entry for most, but the public spaces are open and anyone can go there, anyone can enjoy them. And when they have activations and entertainment, they're open to the public. So I mean, that's just what I thought as you were talking, may or may not be related, but that's another one that I just remembered. Now the question is, can we fix this? We are focusing on the decline of the number of third places. Of course, there's a lot of examples of fantastic, great third places currently that have been created in later years that may make people to think, but what are these guys talking about? There's no decline. What about these fantastic places? But the truth, the reality is that we need more of them because the epidemic of loneliness in cities is it's crying for help. The third places the abundance of third places it's an issue that we really need to tackle. So we are thinking of two ways in which we may address the decline on the number of third places. Number one is to find new models, and number two is the adaptation to new values. Rick.
So just thinking about sort of these case studies that I gave and other case studies that I've seen and how we can think about third places, you know, so one of them is saying we're going to combine several economically productive uses into one place. I gave the example of Wild Detectives. A bar can usually figure out how to make it, but a coffee house or a bookstore, those are rough models. Or there's a place called The Spin in far north Dallas that is both a record store and a coffee house, and it's really good at being both, right? So it's like, can you take different things that are maybe economically productive and combine them? Subdividing spaces into multiple uses. The smaller you can break things down, the more creative you can be, the more you can lower the barrier to entry towards doing really good stuff, and the less standardized everything has to be. Finding creative uses of vacant and underutilized spaces. You know, we have right now, we're you know, a lot of our main streets have too many vacant storefronts, which Jaime's, that's his specialty right there, but that's something that all of us who work on downtowns come across. How do you creatively think about these spaces, or thinking about strip suburban shopping centers, places that we just blow off in many cases if we're urbanists, that we shouldn't blow off, because these are huge opportunities to think creatively with space. Increasing programming, having you know, different things that we do at different times. That might mean, you know, we're gonna have wine walks here. We're gonna have different things that we do outside that are going to attract people to this place. Project for Public Spaces talks about the power of 10 plus. Can you take a public space and have 10 plus things to do in them? And then working with not-for-profit organizations that have certain types of missions. So if we think of one opportunity as houses of worship, and normally in most ways they don't necessarily fit the definition of a third place. That could be debatable, but a lot of times they have the space and they have the opportunities to do this. So there's a suburb of Dallas called Mesquite, and there's a church right into downtown, but they also they were a former Opry House, right? They also allow special events to happen within their church, and they also have a lobby that serves coffee all the time, and they also do art openings and present art in the lobby, right? So all of these places can be opportunities if we think creatively.
So as we are talking about this, what I would like to, an idea I would like to leave with the audience as we talk about this, is how this plugs into what you do and what you can do in your community to help a third place emerge. So now we move on to the adaptation to new values. I was talking a lot about how space has moved to the digital realm, and how we are finding our communities online, and how we are meeting our communities that are transcending many of the divisions that we have in our society, but we can meet in an intellectual basis with people online. And so those communities can be more profound, those communities can be more deliberate, those communities can be stronger. And when they meet and when they ground, it can be a beautiful thing. So cities can foster the real life manifestation of digital communities. These digital communities will have to ground, because the end of what we are trying to do, everyone, is to meet with people and then do something. Whenever that happens, cities can be ready to help this happen. How can they do this? They may simplify rules for community-minded digital entrepreneurs. Typically, the places where this would happen are places like the ones Rick showed. These are places where the owners are open to new ventures, where the owners are open to combined uses, where the owners are open to have two seemingly completely different sources of revenue, but that are coming together into a place. They are people who are typically more prone to activate their places with entertainment. They're aware that their business is not so much what they do, but hospitality. So they are being hubs of their communities and bringing people into their places. Promoting the hybridization of innovative businesses. So what this means is that people can have different channels, and one of those channels for a third place can be a digital channel. So they can become this great place where communities are finding their way into, and also having the actual physical third place, and then making those connections, so people, when they ground, they come to their places. Devolving rule setting to values-based organizations. This is what Rick talked about, the houses of worship, for example, when they can set up places that right now, for example, there's 3 or 4 churches in my town. I live in a town of 40,000 people. There's within 5-minute walk, there's 3 or 4 churches that have huge parking lots that they cannot do anything with those parking lots because they are required. Right. So when we are devolving the power to set rules to these, for example, houses of worship, they can say, okay, what if we create a, I don't know, housing project? What if we create a community center? What if we create a knitting club? And these things may happen when they have a little bit more power and a little bit more decision-making power on what they do with their land. And also including remote in local programming. There's lots of wonderful festivals that cities put up. There's lots of wonderful activities, and these can have some sort of remote component where they are meeting up with another great festival that's happening at the same time in a different city. So these things start to the digital spaces start to make sense in a local context, and that could work very well. I think that's it. Thank you so much. Let's keep building the new third places. Our contact information is there. If you want to contact us with any questions or anything regarding this presentation, we'd be super happy to oblige. And I am going to stop sharing so we can turn it over to Laura.
Thank you so much. That was really awesome. As somebody who loves a coffee shop, I was really excited about all the ones in your area, Rick. So I'm going to start us off with a few questions that I have prepared, and then we'll turn it over to the audience Q&A. So as a reminder to our attendees, you can put any questions you have right in that Q&A function. So to start off, I was just wondering, how does new urbanism play a role in your work, and kind of what principles do you find the most relevant?
You know, it's interesting for me because I've gone to, I've been to 12 CNUs, I guess, or something like that, or I've been going for about 12 years. So I guess I've been to about 10 or 11 CNUs. I think that the new urbanism, that the original new urbanism really figured out the very fundamentals physically of how we build places. And really pulled that out of the dustbins of history in the 80s and 90s. And it's very much embedded in the way that I think about how to create complete communities, how to integrate, sort of how to integrate various uses into people's lives, and how to offer an option that people can be much more physically connected to community through design. I think what's kept me going back year after year is that something that I think most people who don't closely follow the new urbanism know is that most of the great ideas that have come out of the last 30 years of urbanism have been closely connected to the new urbanism in some way. So I've seen a lot of things like the tactical urbanist movement that I've been very kind of connected to for many years. But just about anything, if you look at the concepts, starting with transit-oriented development, starting with sort of the relationship with the strong towns movement and the understanding of incrementalism. I think at first the new urbanism figured out how to physically build places, but I think as it's evolved, it's also started to understand how to build places for people and how money connects to that. So that, I guess that's a short version of it for me. It's kind of influenced everything about the way that I think about my profession.
That's awesome. I found the new urbanism when I was still in architecture school, and this is going to be 25 years now. So the biggest thing, the biggest breakthrough that I found way back then, and I keep finding now, is the fact that we are talking about scale, and we are obliterating the concept of you need a big building that is supposed to do this, as opposed to you need a wonderful city where anything can happen, and small things happening make a beautiful city. So I think that is the way that this connects the best with the third place concept, is that if we are allowed to have very small places, if we are allowed to have human scale initiative, let's say, in our cities, it's very possible that I can open up my garage and just throw a rug and put a sofa there, and it'll be a third place, right? Usually, if you are in a place with an HOA, for example, they'll cite me. So it's very important to be able to think of how uses, how regulations, how zoning are affecting our individual ability to create third places.
Absolutely. Super awesome. Also learning about both of your involvement with CNU. Always interesting to hear from our panelists. So I'm going to actually turn it over to some of our attendee questions as they keep flying in. Kind of a first question that I wanted to ask you is, you kind of framed the start of this in like the post-COVID era and what we're seeing with third places. And we had an attendee wondering, what about the kind of parklets and plazas that came out of that time, and kind of where you see that role in third places moving forward?
Parklets are fantastic. I live very close to New York City, and just seeing the way that space has been reclaimed from parking to seating has been amazing. These are mainly not third places in the original sense, though. These are extensions of the serving area of restaurants. So if I am going to this wonderful French place and I'm having, I don't know, whatever, and a glass of wine, I can sit there. If I am not, I cannot. So yes, there's a lot of more opportunities to engage in public space have come after COVID, thankfully, but not necessarily being low barrier of entry, not necessarily being public, at least in the sense of the parklets. Plazas, open streets, for example, we can now just close whatever streets and it'll be a public space now. Yes, there's many, many more chances to do that. And there's a lot of people who are doing that. I met someone in a placemaking X meeting in Brooklyn. They do dancing, and they just put up fabulous parties, and people in the neighborhood just come, and it's a beautiful way of building community from the ground up. So yes, there's some places that have come up that are not necessarily third places, and yes, there's lots of opportunities that people have found to create third places. Yes, I guess destroys our argument. But the fact of the matter is that there's a lot more people in the world right now, and there's a lot more ways to interact and to connect with other people. And if we explore more what these new instances are for third places, like the digital spaces, we can explore more how to ground these things and how to plug these things into cities that desperately need them.
So I've had a little bit different experience in my immediate neighborhood. I live in the Bishop Arts neighborhood in Dallas. And during COVID, there were a lot of sort of parklets and outdoor seating areas that were put out there without permission. And it's funny because I'd spent 7 years talking to the city about, hey, how can we get parklets out there? And what's surprising is that they're still there in a neighborhood that has profound parking issues. The city has let them be out there, and they are used in a not very privatized way in the case of this particular neighborhood in Dallas. People kind of, if I want to sit there, grab a burrito in the morning and sit in any of these places, I can do so, and you have a lot of that. I would say that there is, there's a line between kind of a third place and public space that can be murky. And that maybe could be, you could hammer in a definition. A third place usually is a little bit more of kind of, it's open to people, but you're still in a particular environment in general, I would say. Whereas if you're in a public space, if you're in a plaza, I think that's a little bit different than being in a third place. And if you're, as in my neighborhood, where you can go now and you can sit out in public, maybe next to a restaurant, it's a little bit more murky as to what that is. But I think overall, any trend of extending out into the public space and strengthening the public space, whether or not we call it a third place, is certainly a trend that is very positive, and it's been a tremendously positive thing for my neighborhood, at least.
Very interesting. Yeah, absolutely. There have been a lot of experiences over the past couple of years that have definitely informed placemaking moving forward, I think. And speaking of kind of placemaking on more the regulatory side, we have a couple questions kind of about the impact on zoning and kind of what the role of things like real estate developers might be in creating these third places.
I think developers need them. It's very hard to create something from scratch that really works from day one. So I think the people who have the most interest in third places being very active and bringing a lot of people are developers, because this is how they are able to say, hey, the place I created is a success, as opposed to I created this wonderful place that looks beautiful, but 2 or 3 years in, it's decaying because no one came, right? It's their triumph to say, hey, this really works because it attracts a lot of people. So being in their best interest to have that, I think there's a lot of people who are experimenting on this, and I know a lot of developers whose narratives are precisely that. There's one gentleman out of Atlanta who his thing is tacos and patios. This is what brings people together. This is precisely a third place, right? It's a very basic garage that you can open and sell a taco, and people will come, and people will get together, and people will talk, and people will form a community, right? So I think developers are the best suited people to actually think of these places and provide these places.
Yeah, I mean, and the zoning question is a complex one. I think in a lot of cases, zoning, to kind of riff off of Jaime's point from before, is meant to very much standardize things. And so it helps to create a situation where everything is kind of the same as everywhere else, and where there's a high barrier to entry to somebody who wants to come in. So I think, there's ways to hack things, for example, but I think it's about lowering the barrier to entry and breaking things down into smaller units, right? It's like, okay, we've got this big storefront. Can we break it down into multiple businesses so that someone can just come in? And there's a lot of different ways to kind of do that type of incubation. In terms of developers, I mean, the thing about any type of development, especially if it's mixed use, but even if it's not, you have a chicken egg problem, right? It's like, well, we want to have the amenities, but if we don't have the rooftops, how do we get the amenities? And a lot of times getting residential units in is a lot easier than getting a bunch of retail in and things like that. And so when developers think of retail, they tend to think of very standardized models that are generally not, or if commercial uses, restaurants, right, that are generally not really third places. So if they start thinking creatively, they can do that. There's a place, I actually found the name of it. It took me a long time to find the name, and I'm drawing a blank right now. But there's a place in Chicago that I used to go to. You literally had a developer who had, in the Rogers Park neighborhood of Chicago, he owned a bunch of different properties. He had a vacant storefront, and he went to some not-for-profit groups, and he said, if you all pay the utilities, you can use this space, pay $1 a month rent, and the only thing I ask is that whatever happens here, no money can be exchanged, right? So this would have been a vacant spot for him. You have someone taking care of it. You have something that's drawing people in. It's definitely in this developer's best interest to have something there rather than nothing. And it's in their interest to have something that's creative, and that doesn't necessarily compete with the other businesses there. There's a lot of examples of developers who are sitting on vacancy that they're renting it out for cheap or at no cost. In fact, I use the example of the Opening Bell Coffee, and there's other examples where they're kind of like, we're going to subsidize this a little bit because you're going to be the amenity that helps us rent out all of these apartment units here. If I were a developer, I would be thinking very consciously about that, because if you're going to try to get people to live there, or especially to office at a time when we know what the office market is like, you've got to have amenities. And I would be personally thinking, how can these amenities be third places that will make people hang out here and that will make people love and care about what I'm doing here?
Totally makes sense. And speaking of, creating places people love, Lonnie asked a question, which is, what can community members do to repair the loss of a third place? And she gives the example, or they give the example of, our local pub brewery was closed and scraped and replaced by a drive-through fast food chain.
That's horrible. Yeah. I take regular walks around my town, and if you don't know, the North Jersey is very packed together. We are landlocked. So I walk 4 blocks and I'm in a different town. So whenever I go to the next town over, there's a wonderful avenue. It's a beautiful tree line, very, very tall trees, beautiful houses. It's 100% residential. But I'm walking there, and there is the Greenway, which is an old rail line that connects Morris County with New York City. With Jersey City, actually, and whatever. The point is that these people have created this little living room. They put 2 benches and a Chinese pot with flowers that they may be seasonal or whatever. They put them today, they take them tomorrow, and there's a little plaque that says, "Stay a while." The town, not many people walk in the town, but whenever 2 people are walking, this is where they will meet. This is where they will stop for 2 minutes and share. Maybe they don't even sit, but this place has been created to stop, to force people to make a pause and force people to connect. And when they are connecting with the place, they're also connecting with each other. So this is something that people can do very easily. Provide a bench. Put a bench in every street corner and see what happens. There's a wonderful project by the Social Life Project of Fred Kent, who most people will know here. And he's saying, just put a bench in every corner and see what happens. The community building minded people will come and will make that the hub of the community.
I mean, I love that example. So, I think that if you own, say, commercial property or something like that, or you're part of a downtown association, or you're active in a place, sometimes finding a place to focus on can be easier, right? And it's all about increments whether you're figuring out how to create a place or how to make a place that already exists better, right? So it can be as simple as, hey, we've got this coffee house here, but it kind of closes at 3 because that's how it makes money. Can we organize a game night? Can we have people agreeing to buy things? And can we make this so that you have one more night where it's open, where it's lively, and where it makes money, right? Or it could be, we've got this space here, can we use it? A lot of the work that I've done over the last 10.5 years, almost 11 years actually, has been about, kind of coming in and figuring out where can we organize people so that property owners, business owners, the Main Street manager, the chamber, the economic development person are on the same page and find opportunities. So it can be a little bit hard just as a citizen to find that. I would say as a citizen, if nothing else, I just find myself being very conscious about supporting these places. And I find myself, I think, just as a normal citizen, one of the best things you can do is vote with your money. And, you have places like Opening Bell, there's several other places where someone can come in and spend a couple dollars and hang out for a while. If I can come in and I can afford to spend $20 and buy some stuff, that's a good way to help move the needle. Or if I can make it a little bit more of a contribution to the person who's, performing or something like that, throw a little extra money in their pot. I think of it, a lot of what inspires me to think about third places. I happen to be somebody who lived in a lot of areas that were a little bit different than the US experience, Ann Arbor, Michigan, the University neighborhood of Cincinnati, kind of some of your cooler neighborhoods in Chicago and things like that. So I got to experience a lot of these places, but I also see how they enhance my life, right? I met my ex-wife in 2001 at a place called Gourmands that was open until midnight. And we were doing poetry readings there. And I bought a cup of tea and I could hang out at this place until midnight and participate in poetry readings and open mics, right? You could not do that in Chicago or in most American cities today, or nothing even close to it. So I think a little bit of a tangent, but I think like what you support, if nothing else, with your personal life, and then how you organize with other people who are part of your community and help to see how you can create something good, is probably the broadest answer I could give to that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really also like that concept of the stay a while, Jaime, as well. I thought that was a good way of thinking about it. So yeah, we're powering through these questions, but we still got a lot more out there. So Jeffrey Osmond asks, how do shopping malls with anchor stores and gathering places like food courts play into the third place concept? And as these malls are kind of die, where can young people and teenagers go?
So the mall copied Main Street. The mall is a copy of Main Street in a safe and secured and secluded place. I always say that it's time to Main Street to copy back. We have 50, 60 years of lessons that the mall has learned that we can copy back and we can bring back to public space. So yeah, we can hang out in public spaces 100%. We just need to make them more friendly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I've worked on some very creative ideas and concepts in strip shopping centers. I was involved in, for example, this place, Grow DeSoto, which is in an inner ring suburb of Dallas, that shows that we can rethink creatively shopping centers to have semi-public spaces and public spaces. Obviously, some of the comments in this group right now are saying things like, most developers don't think that outside the box. I agree. There's going to need to be developers who think a little bit more outside the box, as some do. And there's going to need to be cities that are willing to work with these developers and willing to be flexible about their rules. Where teenagers go nowadays, I don't know. I find it personally to be depressing. And one of the things that I've been really conscious of is talking to enough young people to be persuaded that my perspective on the disappearing third places isn't some middle-aged guy who's looking back at his youth and not realizing what the youth are doing. I really don't think that's the case at all. So for example, I'll go on social media a lot and try to be very specific. What is a place where you could go in your community for under $10 and connect with people and have a good time? And a lot of people say, a lot of younger people even say the library. Now, libraries are wonderful. I go to libraries now probably once a week. I love libraries. If you're a high school student or a college student, and the best place to go in your community for under $10 to meet with people, to connect with people, and to socialize is the library, there's something that's missing that you're being deprived of as a young person, in my opinion. Like, there should be better options for fun than hanging out at the library. And in many cases, it appears that they're not. So I know there's a virtual world. I doubt that it's a substitute, and a lot of the young people who I talk to tell me that it's not a substitute for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yeah, we saw some folks in the chat here and as well talking about libraries as a third space, and how they've evolved a little bit. I think, again, to match the kind of void that you're describing for a lot of these young folks. Another question here is from Tess Dornfield, and she's asking, as an older millennial, it feels like all these examples are engineered for my post-hipster expendable income demographic. How long is that appeal going to last? Are younger generations going to keep sustaining them, or are they going to seem dated?
I think they will seem dated. I think, what are the places that we love to go when we go to other places are typically historical places, and they have some specific characteristics that have stayed through hundreds of years, and we're looking for those same things. Regardless of the design of the places, right? Right now, everyone is using the subway tiles and open face break and all the typical things that everyone is using right now in places, and everything starts to look the same. Right? In a few years, that will be dated, but the principles will stay. If you have a wonderful host, if you have a place where people are not going to harass you when you're there, if you have a place that has a regularly low barrier of entry, that will stay regardless of the design. Some designs really don't get old. So maybe we'll see. I mean, we see the resurgence of 80s arcades. I was just at an 80s arcade with my son, and he was playing Pac-Man and Mortal Kombat. So yeah, I mean, some things really do stay.
And so that's a good point. And I think that as somebody who was young at a certain time and in certain kind of alternative cultures, right? Like I see that where sometimes there's some people, not most, but some people in the tactical urbanism movement where it feels like, okay, did you create something for other hipsters, or are you creating something for everybody? So the examples that I'm attracted to may connect with my own experience in that way. I think the principle has to be lowering the barrier to entry, so that whoever wants to do something can do it creatively. As the planning consultant, right, I come into a place and it's like, I'm an outsider, so what I can do is give you tools and resources and share some things, and if you can run with it, you'll look good and I'll look good, right? Well, but I'm not gonna be here. I haven't been here for 20 years doing the work, and I'm not gonna be here for another 20 years. That's your job. I'm just here to kind of give you some tools. So I think that's a good question, but I think that the idea of lowering the barriers is a good one. It's interesting. I was several months ago, someone mentioned boba shops. I was walking around my neighborhood and I was thinking, if I were, maybe a teenager who had $10 in my pocket, where would I hang out in this neighborhood besides maybe the coffee house? And once I did that and I was walking around my neighborhood, which has, 50 businesses, immediately the boba shop. I'm like, that's where I'd hang out. I'd be over there. So you've got, in Denton, you've got a kava bar that's opened up that has no alcohol. And this is that college town I mentioned, but it's packed in there and it's social in there. It has a lot of the functions of the traditional functions of a bar or an old school coffee house there. So yeah, making sure that as planners or as placemakers, that we're not imposing our preferences onto other communities, but instead we're helping them to fulfill their own needs is a good reminder that I appreciate.
One thing I can say is that what I do, so it's not good to impose any of our views, but I think it's very, very important for people who are trying to provide these places that want them to last, that there's a few things that are completely necessary in places. And I'm going to refer again to another book by authors Jim Gilmore and Joe Pine. First book is The Experience Economy, and the second book is Authenticity. And the idea of the Authenticity book is that whenever we are trying to provide an experience, and right now we are talking about deliberately providing experiences, but this is what we have been doing forever. This is how, when you open a place, people decide to come or do not decide to come. It's because you are either offering a good experience or you're not offering a good experience. Right now, we are deliberate about it. And the idea is that it needs to be authentic. It needs to be hospitable, and it needs to be fun. So whenever people are coming and see that there is a great host that is genuinely and authentically greeting them and happy to have them in his home or their home, it's very important. It's also very important so that when the people go in, they see that the place has been crafted with love. It hasn't just been put up as a movie set to bring people for 5 minutes and then head them out. And it also needs to be a place where people can easily connect. I see lots of comments and questions that are touching the transportation issue. So we would probably need an extra hour to touch everything that relates to transportation. But one thing I can say is that there's some places that have been blessed that they don't require extra efforts for people to go there. They can just walk for 5 or 10 minutes and meet in a place. These places have been blessed. And so, yes, I guess what we need to do is we need to think of providing the best experience possible, the best reason so that people want to come, especially in places that are not as blessed as downtowns and main streets.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I'll just note for our attendees that we're right around 1 o'clock. So if you need to dip out, thank you so much for joining us. A recording of this presentation will be made available within 24 hours. We have a couple more questions. So if you guys want to stick around for a few minutes, we can kind of wrap those up. And again, if you have to dip out, this will be part of the recording available tomorrow. So to continue a couple of our questions, there's this one that's, have you seen examples where the different components of a space, like a bookstore with a coffee shop and music, are run by different entities?
I have. I work with local businesses. That's my job, working with local businesses. So I see a lot of that. And the one thing I see is that the ability to make partnerships sometimes is not innate of business owners. Sometimes it is. But sometimes when it's not innate of business owners, this is the role of the property manager if it's a private development, or the district manager if it's a main street or downtown or whatever. They can foster these partnerships. They can foster a lot of ways for business owners to meet outside of the regular business. So I don't know, meet and greets or business breakfasts or whatever, so that they are starting to come together, and they're starting to talk, and they're starting to forge partnerships. When the atmosphere of the place becomes a place of partnerships, more partnerships happen. So it's very important to keep the people together and working. I have definitely seen places where different providers get together and they rent one place and they put their different businesses in the same place and they're acting as separate entities. I've seen other places where someone decides to open the place and brings the other entities as providers and they sell their wares. And I mean, I've seen several combinations of this. I've seen what I do see a lot is that property owners are not keen to have more places rented to more people. They want to have their places rented to less people because that's less work for them. And it's understandable, but it's, I guess there's a Goldilocks area that we need to find so that we are providing enough diversity, enough offering for the city while keeping the sanity of the developers or the property owners.
So I think that that's a lot I think Jaime's point is correct, that it's more administratively complex. However, I think that's really the wave of the future and what needs to happen. And the reason why I say that is because I think all of this stuff, I keep using the phrase lowering barrier to entry. And at the risk of being a broken record, I think that's what needs to happen. So because if I want to take a storefront, right, it's like I've got to have really good credit. I have to have a whole lot of confidence in my business model. I have to take out a 5-year lease, a 10-year lease. And if things go wrong, I have a lot of other responsibilities, right, for the whole space. And if things go wrong, I'm going to be ruined. So the question is, can you do something where you're saying, okay, we're going to take a space and we're going to subdivide it into several businesses. So I gave the example which is worth looking into, of Grow DeSoto, where they literally took this old Ace Hardware and now it's a bunch of micro retail, micro restaurants by this guy, Monty Anderson, who I'm sure a lot of people who are listening to this right now know. And it functions as a third place, and it has a lot of really unique businesses because you can come in and you can take a small space and take a short-term lease, and if it falls apart, then you're going to be much more okay. Similar in our area, the same developer, Monty, this place Tyler Station, which has everything from industrial uses to a brewery to co-working, art galleries, stores, all of this stuff in about 110 square mile space. Now, in some cases, he actually says, okay, you're going to rent this space for me, and then you can sublease it so that he doesn't have to deal with every single tiny little tenant. But you think of, there's a place I think of in Fort Worth that I just rediscovered after a long time called Doc's Record and Vintage. And you've got this big, huge record store, but you have a bunch of little vintage places as well, that are all very well curated. This is the traditional model that's used globally, right? This is all of the stuff that we're doing, whether it's starting in the new urbanism or moving on to the strong towns movement. It's like, okay, we're rediscovering lost technologies that we developed over millennia. It's like if you have a farmer's market, you've got a bunch of different vendors. If you have, a bazaar in Mexico, right? We still, in our region, we have a bunch of these buildings, big box stores, and you have a bunch of unique businesses that are in them. So it's a matter of how you curate them. And there's a tremendous number of examples. And I think there are other things that could be evolved into something more interesting. So I just went into an antique mall in McKinney, which is kind of a suburb, downtown. It's like the perfect downtown in DFW. Like everything's at 100%, everything's perfect. I go into this antique mall and I find this little place that sells records, and I'm finding Dead Kennedys and Megadeth records in downtown McKinney, Texas. Only by subdividing it so much that people can take many risks are you going to find a Dead Kennedys record in McKinney, Texas, right? It's just it allows breaking things down, allows creativity, and that's what place after place that I'm seeing. We could do a whole webinar on that, right? That's a huge thing that's happening all over the place.
Yeah, I'm getting the sense that I think this is a ripe topic for maybe a couple more on the park bench webinars.
Definitely.
Just a couple more questions here. One more back to the role of remote work and the official or informal shared workspaces, which seem like the primary use of a lot of third spaces like coffee shops. And how do you see the use of work, how do you see the role of remote work in developing or harnessing or being harnessed for creating third places?
I'm going to refer to the co-working spaces first, I guess. So there's a lot of instances where people have been working remote and have been trying to find places to work, not necessarily working in their homes, but going into the coffee shop, going into the whatever in their towns. And those places become de facto third places, right? But you are not there to socialize. You are not there. If people are talking to you while you're in a meeting, you will not be nice. You will not respond. If people are talking to you while you're in a deadline, you may not be nice, may not respond. So I guess one of the main things for this is that they need to be places of leisure where people are just there and open to conversation and open to meeting other people. And if you are in a work schedule, that may not be compatible with, social instances. Although they may have their own activations of the space. They may have their own agenda for, I don't know, making co-worker socials. So every Thursday at 5 p.m. they just, I don't know, pop up a few beers and people get together and talk. And these are people that have been working together, not together, but in the same place for a while. So they have seen each other, have said hi to each other. So there's more chances for people to meet. But necessarily the third places are, not necessarily third places are places where people have something else that they need to do, like work. So I wouldn't include them, at least not in the first places of a list. I don't know if Rick feels differently.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting because it's like this melding of the second place and the third place, right? Like when they first said it's like you've got your home, you've got your work, and then you've got your third place. I was in, for most of the last 10.5 years, I've been in co-working spaces, either at first sharing a floor or in private offices. I now happen by coincidence to be subleasing in a private office of what 6 years ago was a co-working space where I was co-working in, and at the same space, and it still has a lot of those functions. Like they still have a lot of special events. So I have been, especially the last space I was in kind of changed, but before it was like you definitely had a lot of events, and sometimes it was a distraction. For example, on Thursday nights, there'd be, starting Thursday afternoon, there were a certain group of people who started tuning out and going wild every Thursday. And I remember my intern going, do these people work? And it's like, you're just coming on Thursday. They normally work, right? So it can be a distraction. It can be a conflict. When I subleased at this place, I had some references that the person knew, and he was like, I don't want people here who aren't here to work, right? Like we'll have an event a couple times a month and you're welcome to come and have a drink or two, but like, if you're not here to work all day, then it's just a distraction for me. So, and I've seen a lot of examples. The Tyler Station example I gave has a co-working space that's much like that wax space. But I think that the co-working model itself is challenging, right? So like we're finding that it's not a great model. Where co-working models have worked is if the person who is someone already has an office there, they're already there every day, and they also run a co-working space, so that you don't have to hire separate staff to staff it. So the traditional model we have of co-working is not necessarily very functional. In terms of kind of the melding of the classic example being people doing work in a coffee house, right? I think that there can be, like, there's going to be an element of that, right? And that's like how it's approached. Like I got my studying done in coffee houses when I was in college. I used coffee houses like they were bars, right? I mean, they didn't serve alcohol most of the ones I went to, but it was like I'm hanging out there until 1, I'm hanging out with friends, I'm also getting work done, but it's a little bit of a melding of the two. I think that there can be a melding of the two, but I think it's very challenging. Places like Wild Detectives, they have ways, the example that I gave earlier, they have ways of kind of trying to discourage a lot of it. Like, for example, they don't have Wi-Fi on weekends. And you know, sometimes people are going to use Wi-Fi anyway, sometimes people are going to work. Like, it's okay to have that a little bit, but if it's too much, it's a lot. You also get away with it more, to go back to the example of Wild Detectives, if it's a place with some nooks and crannies, where you can sit here and probably most people are going to sit at this table. Like, you've got these big shared tables and people kind of sit there and do work, but you've also got couches in the back. You've also got a bar. You've also got outdoor in front and out back, right? So you've got a lot of different experiences that people can have, and that can work better. But ultimately, you know, in sort of, if we summarize the whole thing, I don't think that the use of these places as workspaces in net is particularly conducive to their use as third places where people can connect. I think that there's definitely a conflict of purposes there.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a very interesting conversation that I'm sure will keep impacting a lot of coffee shops and third places around the country. And kind of with that, I think this is a good place to thank you both so much for your time and wrap this up. As a reminder, this is recorded and will be available tomorrow. Jaime and Rick, thank you once again for such a wonderful conversation. And I hope everyone who was able to join today has a wonderful day.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks for having us. Thanks everybody for coming in your lunch and checking out this conversation.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.